If I were to ask you what the number one thing is that's keeping people from the life that they want, not just financially, but the life of their dreams, right? The thing that they imagined when they were a kid, what would you say? Would you say it was money, who they knew, who they hung out with, their job? Would you say lack of schooling? I would argue that it's none of those things. I would argue that those things are simply a symptom of the biggest interference that has ever existed. Screens, social media, stimulation overload. I think that addiction is plaguing the human race, and I think that we are all stimulation addicts. Now, have a thought with me for a second. Imagine somebody that completely avoids any form of stimulation. The only form of knowledge that they intake is from books. No news, no social media, no television. Do you think this person would be better off or worse off than the person who intakes television, news, and social media? Now, an argument could be made that television, news, and social media give you more up-to-date and current information, but how much of that do you really retain on a cellular level? The good thing about books is that it's on one topic and it beats the horse to death. It goes in on that topic endlessly until you understand it in 14 different ways. At least a good book, a book that's about something in specific. And I think in our new world, with the amount of stimulation that we have, we struggle. And I think this finds its way into every decision that we make on our day-to-day basis. Now, when you need to make a decision about what to do with your life, it's like, well, there's 15,000 different options and I can't categorize any of them, and I don't know which one I actually like more because I haven't taken the time to attempt any of them, because it's scary to attempt any one thing because there's so many options. And then you end up only liking your comfortable bubble where you're on your couch and you're scrolling until you don't even like that because it's giving you anxiety. And then you diagnose yourself with an anxiety disorder, go on medication, and repeat this cycle until the end of time. When in reality, the thing that potentially is holding us back from our potential is stimulation. Now, I think this is true. I think it's hard to argue any other way, and that's why I'm creating this channel. It's documenting my journey as someone who is a stimulation addict. I absolutely am. I've been since I was probably 14 when I first found video games, and then YouTube, and I became obsessed. I loved it. While it fueled a creative part of me, it also fueled that ADHD thing that everybody has, where it's like constant stimulation. I want new, I want new, I want new, because life is boring. Life is consistent. And change just feels entertaining. It feels good. Especially when it's not changing our own lives. So we become addicted to this. We become addicted to that sort of dopamine hit that we get in our brain every time we see something new and exciting and different. So, I think it's simple. I think we need to detox. And I don't think it's just avoidance. I think avoidance is dangerous. I think if you only attempt to avoid stimulation, you're bound to relapse. I think it's more integration. So I'm not going to simply give up all form of social media, but I'm going to learn self-control. And so yes, I'm not going to watch social media, but I'm also not going to delete it from my phone, because deleting it from my phone removes the choice. And I don't think that I'll learn without the choice. Now, they say in Alcoholics Anonymous that you need to remove yourself from the situation. You need to separate yourself from that old life that you used to live. And while this is a good temporary fix, I don't know if it applies to devices, because it's around us everywhere. Movies, billboards, the news, in every house. It's like if you were an addict and you were a heroin addict, and every house you went into, people were just doing heroin in front of you, and everybody did heroin. Your spouse, it was completely normal to do heroin. And suddenly you were like, actually, guys, I don't think I'm gonna do heroin. And I was like, why? What are you talking about? Heroin's great. Why are you being weird? I mean, in a way, this is sort of how alcohol can be. Almost everyone drinks. Yet it's still not as generally accepted as cell phones. I mean, if you're drinking on a Wednesday consistently in the middle of the day, people are going to be like, dude, you got a problem. You got to figure this out. You're drinking a lot. But if you're on your phone at noon in the middle of work scrolling, nobody sees it as a problem. It's just like, he's on his phone. I think it is. It was said by many people. I don't know who exactly said it, but that the best art that will ever be made has been made, because I don't think there can be another, let's say, Mozart with cell phones. The amount of stimulation that we have today, it's so much harder to become great, because there's so much more that you have to avoid. And there's ways to argue this, right? There's always been things to avoid. And there's always been a lot. But there's something immediate that we have nowadays that we didn't used to have. The things that you used to have to avoid, you could literally avoid them. You could literally separate yourself from them completely. But you can't do that with phones, so I think we need to elevate ourselves. We need to become better. We need to evolve. And I think reminding ourselves, because we forget, right? Our brains cycle through new thoughts every day. We have 89,000 thoughts a day or something. We have to remind ourselves consistently, whether that's on our phone screen, whether that's written down on a checklist, whether that's consistently posting a video, which is what I'm going to do. I have goals, I want to become a pilot. I'm a writer. I want to release books. I want them to be good. And I want to love my life. I want to connect to the world. I want to get out in nature and experience this thing. So that's my goal. I just had a thought. I gotta write it down. I just had a thought, and my thought is, because it's hard to know what to do if you don't have a goal, right? If you have infinite options, your brain struggles to make a choice. So having a goal is helpful, right? And if you don't have a goal, your goal could be finding a goal. And if your goal is finding a goal, then you have to try new things. And if your goal is to try new things, you have to think, well, what is the first thing that I want to try most? And then start there, right? And for me, and if you can't find anything to try, well, think, what is the least amount of resistance? And if you're a little crazy like me, you could think, actually, what's the most amount of resistance? What's the thing I want to do the least? And that just jumps you, then you dive right in. But like I said, I just thought of this thing for my traveling, because I want to start seeing more of the world. And I figure what I could do is I could check off every location. I could try to explore new places every time. It just helps. That way it simplifies the process and stress. So yeah. Anyhow, let me end this off before I write that down. I think if we as people want to find success in our lives, more than just financial success, I think we need to get ourselves under control. We need to be the captain of our own ship. And I think the number one way to start is to reduce your stimulation addiction. And it's not just social media, it's the news. The news is a huge one. That's stimulation, new information. How much have you really learned this year by watching the news? You've just heard the same thing repeated a million times. So, that's all I have to say on that. See you tomorrow.